do it, baby. It's time to talk about the news. Yeah, that's me coughing for the air quality here on the West Coast. It's no joke. But don't worry, I got just the cure. Woo! Little LaCroix never hurt no boy. Take a sip. Take a sip of the oat milk latte, the creatine water that's making me fat. Let's talk about the news. Come on. Let's do it. Woo! Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to RGN, the Regular Guy News. I am your host. I am the anchor, Dan Black, and here's what I think. We are the least pretentious name in news. Hello. Welcome to another edition of RGN. Before we get into all the spiciness that is the news and this week in the news, let me introduce out in the field, as always, the one and only, our only correspondent, Miss Erin Finnerty.
Hello, Dan.
Erin,
Dan.
Hello. Reporting live
Hi.
from the field.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me today.
Wow, Erin.
I'm coming to you live from my apartment in Los Angeles, California, where the air quality is the same as it is at your apartment,
Wow.
1 mile away.
The same place you've been reporting for the past 6 to 7 weeks.
This is week 6. I've been embedded here in my apartment.
Wow. Erin, I'm seeing on the board here that you're going to have a special report for us.
Yes.
Later in the episode.
Coming up, I have a very special report.
But everybody...
RGN non-exclusive.
That's unbelievable. Everything on this podcast couldn't be less exclusive. This is the non-exclusive news podcast where as the news gets spicy, I'm asking all the questions you have. Like, what are these people talking about? You know what I mean? What is Jake Tapper talking about? What is Breonna Keeler talking about on CNN? What is Laura Ingraham talking about? Who knows?
Grammy.
Who knows? We're picking up where they left off. And this week is no different. Before we get into it, Erin, I just want to let everyone know that this podcast is grassroots, like Bernie Sanders. And the way you could support this podcast is by leaving a review. You go onto your Apple Podcast. It's in the phone. You go to the purple app square, click on it, and then leave a 5-star review. And if you do, and you criticize behind there or say anything negative or positive, whatever you say, I legally am obligated to read it on there. But it seems to me most of you guys are just leaving 5-star reviews with no comments. So that's nice. That's nice. That's nice. And remember, you could do it without a comment as well. So it's a easy way to support the podcast. Erin, also, we want to hear from you. You couldn't truly be the least pretentious name in news without hearing from the people, the folks out there. We're not persnickety. We're not up in our tower. We want to hear from you. So we have a feature on this podcast called The Mailbag, where you get to send us an email at regularguynews@gmail.com. Erin, as you are in charge of the mailbag out in the field, do we have any how is the mailbag? Is it overflowing?
Let me look. I'm looking around here in the mailbag, and actually, it looks like we have 2 items in the mailbag.
Wow.
This week, Dan.
That,
let me pull them out here.
I feel like that, in our terms, counts as overflowing.
It's bursting.
Wow. We have a low server capacity. 2 emails means we have to pay an extra 50 cents.
Yeah, exactly.
Erin, all right, let's hear what the people have to say.
Well, I'm going to start off the mailbag today with just one quick note from listener Josh T, who I believe is based in the UK. This isn't a question, it's just a comment. Josh T, subject.
He's in the UK right now?
Mm-hmm. Josh T is a UK listener.
Good for you.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So Josh T writes, I've just had my first interaction with a UK QAnon follower who told me Jeffrey Epstein is a pedophile and he has been financed by Bill and Hillary Clinton and Oprah Winfrey and Tom Hanks, and that if it was not for Donald Trump, we would all be doomed. Wow. People are crazy in this modern time.
Wow. You heard it here first. Wow. So you,
Yeah. Yeah.
Tom Hanks. What, it's unbelievable with the QAnon conspiracy. If people don't know what QAnon is, good for you. But you can go back 2 episodes to our "What the F is QAnon" episode where we dive into it. Many would say head first,
Yeah.
and but so people have been bumping into these QAnon conspiracy people. I met someone else, not met someone else I was hanging out with this week. She said one of her friends has become a full-on QAnon supporter. Like believer, supporter. I don't know exactly. I guess really what it comes down to, it means a Trump supporter, really, right?
Yeah.
At its core, what it means in actual practical terms means they're pulling the lever for the big Donnie T.
Right, because don't forget, QAnon believes that Donald Trump has been installed in the White House to stop a cabal of pedophiles and cannibals.
Right. Why? Okay, so I get why the Clintons would be considered to be involved here, because there are pictures of the Clintons with Jeffrey Epstein. Bill Clinton, gun to the head, Bill Clinton, probably a pedophile. I mean,
Maybe not. Maybe he's lapsed. Maybe he's not practicing right now, but at some point, maybe engaged.
And look, that pains me to say because I come from a Clinton household.
Yeah.
I'm a New York, many would say a coastal elite.
It's been said before.
It's been said before. But Bill Clinton, my dad has a picture with Bill Clinton up in his house. You know what I mean? My parents were, they love Hillary. So I'm saying, but look, we have to just be objective here, right? Like, it doesn't look good for Bill Clinton. His interactions, and I know it was a different time, but he went to that Epstein Island. We know what he did to Monica Lewinsky. So to think that Bill Clinton, also even when he was the governor of Arkansas, look, the guy, his time has come and it has went. Okay?
Yeah.
He lived in a time, the Kennedy era, where it was more like, as long as your politics are good, you can be bad.
Right. Remember those days before we were born?
Yeah, because you had like Elliot Spitzer, who was actually a great politician, God, even what was his name? Carlos Danger. What was that guy?
I don't
Anthony
know.
Weiner. Anthony Weiner.
Yeah.
Watch. Okay, Anthony Weiner. It is such a shame that guy was a fucking pedophile, because Anthony Weiner, it was a great performative politician. You talk about the pro wrestling of go Google, try to find this guy when he was like on the any kind of like committee. You see him, he's outraged and passionate, but that's the hypocrisy of the liberals, and it's part of the rise of Donald Trump. Like, we can't turn a blind eye to that anymore. Is that acting like you are higher than thou when we know that your behavior is the same as a lot of the people that you criticize, and living on being on a pedestal is what given rise to a lot of the Republican Party being able to commandeer all these blue issues,
Right.
So, so Bill Clinton, I understand why, if you're like, pedophilia exists, which we said, why QAnon, I believe, is actually has traction, is because it is true. Pedophilia is something that we turn the blind eye to in society. It's happening, and we don't want to acknowledge it, So, I mean, you could see it time after time. Larry Nassar, the coach of the
U.S. women's gymnastics.
U.S. gymnastics, like, what was his name? The Penn State coach.
Oh, yeah. Whatever.
I don't know why I'm blanking on his name right now.
Sandusky,
right? Yeah. And those guys, I'm saying, like, these complaints were coming in way before people were willing to even accept it.
Right. They were coming in and being swept under the rug. And until it got traction in the media, in both those cases, it wasn't known.
So that's why, right. So that's why this stuff is catching on, because as a society, in my opinion, we fail to recognize pedophilia. Now, that also means, like, we have to look at the ugly truth of it, which is the same thing as with this will tie into our topic today about something we turned a blind eye to in society. If someone is wired to have the sexual preferences that are towards, like, very young people, right now we're just like, demonizing them, which we should. Obviously, that's horrific behavior that should be penalized. But also, it's again like there's got to be some kind of preventative measures to recognize these people as a mental health issue, right? Before they act on this, as opposed to having them currently where you go it alone and you live an existence of I'm the same as everybody else, which is always this recipe for failure.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
right?
all that, yes, agreed. And I think this whole QAnon issue, I read one article yesterday, and the problem with it is that it directs all this energy and attention at these big name leftist celebrities, whereas statistics show and real facts in America show that most pedophiles and predators on children are family members, coaches, teachers, or they are committed against kids who ran away, or a lot of like LGBTQ youth who like left home and need shelter. Like, these are the people who are actually committing these horrible acts in the real world,
right?
Not
that's
Tom Hanks.
That is actually kind of the where this not Tom Hanks. So that's what I was getting to, but like that's where this all like comes all around. It's like we don't have real conversations in society anymore. So it's like the same thing as immigration. We talk about like the fact that a wall could get any traction when in reality the way immigration mostly happens is by people overstaying visits, right?
Right.
So most people come in airplanes, right? So it's like we can't even have a conversation. It's real. Like you can literally say, let's build a wall, and people are like, yay. And that's not like tackling the problem. Same thing as being like living in this world where we think pedophiles are like driving around in vans, right?
Right.
Well,
yeah,
now
exactly.
that happens the same way people cross the border over a wall, like where a wall could be. It's a small percentage. What's actually happening is people who are pedophiles looking to act on it they look for positions of power over children and adults. So they have like a trust of everybody so that they can act. Now, that's why you have such a high amount of priests who are pedophiles, teachers, people who have access to children. Larry Nassar was the coach of gymnastics. He actually got a degree as a doctor, right? So he could actually legally touch little girls, you know?
And he built his reputation with other adults as being like the best doctor.
Right. Remember Capturing the Freedmans, that documentary? That took place where I'm from. It was in Great Neck, Long Island, and it was a computer class. And it was like parents would drop their kids off at this computer class in this guy's basement, and it was known as like a really reputable computer class. And then the stuff that was going on in there was like horrific, you know?
That's crazy.
So, yeah. So to bring this all like full circle, it's like we need to have like real conversations in society. But can you even imagine elected officials even acknowledging this stuff without just being like, we caught somebody and we're putting them behind bars?
Yeah, no. And the problem is too, it's like, it's a cycle. So a lot of the people who are like pedophiles or abusing children, it was done to them, maybe by their uncle, and now they're someone's uncle, and now they're doing it. So it's like, where do you even begin to start addressing these problems? It's more than just like, oh, these are your sexual preferences. Like for some people, it's like programmed in them from when they're so little.
Right. So it's just like I feel like so much stuff comes down to like education and preventative. Everything's like some version of quote unquote preventative care and mental health. So you're like, someone needs to be able to. We can't stop this stuff unless somebody feels comfortable to come forward and be like, hey, I have these urges that I don't feel right about. Right. Anyway, I don't know exactly what that looks like. Again, this is RGN. I'm just saying. Right now, what we're doing right now doesn't work. You know.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, we need to figure out a way to make our kids safer. But the reality of the situation is people's frustrations bubble up in these weird ways, like a QAnon. It's like the same thing as like this repressed conversation that we don't have. And so now I don't know what. So you have the Clintons, right? Where it's like
Tom
the
Hanks,
Democrats, we all
Oprah.
need to admit that the Clintons need to go,
Right.
right? I said Bill shouldn't have spoken at the Democratic convention,
Mm-hmm.
and cool. So then Trump, obviously another guy tied to Epstein. Where does Tom Hanks tie into this?
I don't know. Is he being vilified because he had coronavirus?
I don't know. I'll say this. There was 9/11 this week, and was walking my dog on 9/11 in the smoky Los Angeles. So if you don't know,
well, I'm here on the ground. I'm embedded in LA.
Really?
So like, yeah, I can. Yeah, I've been outside. I've been outdoors today, and I can confirm, Dan, that the air quality here is not great.
Yeah, well, the air quality is terrible here. Obviously, it's way worse up in Portland and areas that have more. Portland saying is the most polluted air in the world right now.
Yeah, I've spoken to some folks in Portland in the last week, and it's
right.
Not great.
10% of the population of Portland has been told to evacuate. It's like 500,000 people. It's crazy what's going on over there. But I'm walking around, and it's literally like smells like fire in Los Angeles. And I'm walking and it's 9/11. I'm walking my dog, and I'm like, wow, this is just crazy. Like, and I see a guy. He's wearing a shirt. It's the 7-Eleven logo, but it says 9/11. On 9/11, he's wearing the shirt, and instead of like, I don't know, like serving fresh coffee or whatever on the bottom, it says was an inside job.
Oh, come on.
On 9/11, this guy walking around in my neighborhood. And it's like, it also fucking pisses me off more when like a West Coast guy is doing that also. You know what I mean? Like, not to be like, whatever, I'm a New Yorker, 9/11's mine or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm not doing that, but you're also like, it's so convenient for you to have, this opinion. But, what my point is that this conspiracy stuff is really growing,
Yeah.
Well, maybe he just thinks that shirt's funny to wear on 9/11, but
it's not.
It was like a 50-year-old guy, like not a young guy either.
That's not being. I don't think there was any irony in that man wearing that shirt.
Right,
sadly.
right. Anyway, okay.
Anyway, thanks.
So, all right, thanks to Josh.
T.
All right, what else we got in the mailbag?
We have one more item in the mailbag, Dan, and this one I think you really need to hear.
Okay.
Okay. The subject of this is sorry, guys, and it's from listener Sean W., who you may remember from last week's discussion.
Sean, what's it to you?
Sean, what's it to ya? Okay. Sean W. writes, "Hi, Dan and Erin. I apologize for my email last week since it came off a lot more hostile and combative than I intended. Yes, I agree that Biden is our only bet. My issue is we need to hold him accountable and push him to move further left. We have to criticize him and his policies. Biden is absolutely unequivocally better than Trump. If Biden was president, 180,000 Americans wouldn't be dead from COVID. Right now, Biden thinks Obamacare is the end-all be-all and stated as such during the primary debates. Bernie considers it a first step. We're so many years past the ACA being passed, and we still can't even get one step closer to universal health care. Right. Progress won't happen unless we push. I'm on the Patreon, pal. Cheers up."
Okay. What do you say about Patreon?
He said he's a Patreon, a member of our other podcasts.
Yeah. No, and by the way, I don't need any apology from Sean.
No, that was what I was going to say. No apologies necessary.
I didn't think his email was even rude. I thought his email was his opinion. And then I felt like we had a good conversation about it, and I heard him out, and I liked that. If you could listen to that last week, if you hear it, Sean wrote me an email kind of about the defund the police issue, specifically about the term "all cops are bastards," which I didn't. His rhetoric, I think, is just too far, and I think it's ineffective. But you had some good arguments about why you were frustrated by the police. I think it leads to kind of what happened this week with the police being shot. Parked in Compton, right?
Yep.
Like that kind of rhetoric is just kind of dangerous, and I just think right now everything is it's hot right now. like the temperature is hot, literally and figuratively, and we're trying to bring it down. But Sean, no apologies needed. I thought we had a good dialogue between us via email. So, don't. My point about this podcast is not to be pretentious. Again, if you listen back why I even started RGN, it's like I feel like we live in the era of the Nick Cannon pseudo intellectual who like I got something to prove. I'm just telling you what I think, and it's strong opinions held loosely. And I'm like, listen. I'm just looking to connect with other people about this stuff. You know, I find it really frustrating. I've said this before. I wake up some days I feel Republican. I wake up some days I feel Democrat. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I have days I'm so frustrated by the left that I'm like, I think I'm a Republican. I don't know what to say. Like you know, and so it's like I'm always so shocked by people who like are so like they toe they're like no matter what I agree with this person. I feel 100% the way of the party platforms. Like, I always think that's, like, shocking to me, you know? So, anyway, great conversation, Sean.
Thanks, Sean W.
All right. Erin, I think that we should get into your special report till we get before we get into the topic at hand. So make sure the special report is. So, Erin, I'm going to throw it over to you with a special report from Erin.
Thank you, Dan. I'm coming to you today with a special report on the poll worker shortage in the United States.
Ooh.
Did you know that we have a poll worker shortage, Dan?
I did not know that. I actually would think that so many people are out of work, and I know a lot of poll worker jobs actually pay. That I do know. So I would think that this would be something that would be hard to get.
Right. Well, let me tell you. In addition to my special report, I'll share my personal experience because I have signed up to be a poll worker in LA County.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Oh, good for you.
Really good for me. And so I have a little bit of inside information on poll working in LA County, but on a broader scale, let me tell you, in 2016, the United States and its territories deployed around 1 million poll workers across more than 116,000 polling places nationwide. And at the time, 4 years ago, recruiting was already an issue. Like it's difficult to recruit people to work polls. Now, This was a pre-COVID world, so you figure that many people have jobs that would require them to be there during the election. Now we're in the middle of a pandemic, which compounds the issue because many of the existing poll workers are, retired age or over, like 56 plus. And that places them in the vulnerable population for COVID-19. So working at the polls is out of the question. So we have a severe poll worker shortage coming up. So there is this initiative that's being backed by a bunch of companies and like celebrity spokespeople and Barack Obama at powerthepolls.org, which I visited, and is basically just a resource to get you to your local polling place application where you can apply.
It's a link hub. It's like a tree link.
Yeah, they're trying to make it easy. So their goal was set to recruit 250,000 poll workers, and they've met that goal. So now they're going for another 100,000. So I applied in LA County here, where I'm currently embedded as RGN correspondent, because I figure I'm going to be here for a while. Yes. And what I found, here at least, it is a paid opportunity. There are 2 different work schedules, so you can commit to, here at least, it's 11 or 5 days, and you get paid, you're trained, and you get placed somewhere near you. And it's a way that you can get involved. So a lot of people who are, my age or people under, the age group where you're susceptible to COVID-19 and it's dangerous are kind of volunteering. So I would encourage anyone who's listening to this who has free time on their hands, because I know you do, to visit powerthepolls.org and see if you're eligible to work at your local polling place, because we have lines in like Louisville and other, maybe swing states in this country where, they're of course increasing mail-in voting, but people who prefer to vote in person or maybe don't have the mail-in voting option still need to be able to get in and vote. So I would encourage everyone to do it. And, some companies are paying their employees for days that they take off to work at polling places. And the shortage is, even though they've recruited 250,000 plus people, they still need, there's a million people. And I spoke to someone here on the phone, and I asked him how it was going with getting people to work. And he said that during the primaries earlier this year, which was, if you remember, right at the beginning of the COVID crisis in the US.
I remember. I voted in the primaries.
Yeah.
I did it in person with no mask. Yeah.
He said that they had, 1/3 of their poll workers just not show up to work. And that was at the beginning. So now that this crisis is in full swing, the numbers are even worse. So
yeah, I remember when I went to vote in the primaries. I don't remember when that was. It was probably April, is my guess, right?
Springtime, yeah.
I remember I went right when they opened because I was like, oh, I'll avoid people, but I didn't even think to wear a mask. Like wearing a mask is not even a thing.
So part of working the polls is keeping everything safe and sanitary for people who are using the devices and stuff. So it's meant to be a safe experience. They provide PPE. They pay you. What more do you want?
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So check it out.
All right. So what's the website again?
PowerThePolls.org. And
Power the Polls.
Send you to your
if you're not working right now, it's a good way to help out and make a little bit of money. Seems like a double whammy.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I have a job and I'm still employed, but I am taking time off to do this because I think it's important. And they're paying, at least in LA, $100 a day. So if you signed up for the 11-day schedule, you could make over $1,000.
All right. Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Everybody lock it in.
Lock it in.
All right. Erin with the beautiful special report.
Thank you, Dan.
For people to be in the know. And speaking of being in the know, let's get into our topic for today. We talked about not having real conversations, I find it frustrating because we need to have really, really tough conversations in this country. And we kind of get there, but we don't fully get there. And a lot of this has to do with science denial due to religious beliefs. I mean, I think that, we'll talk about it here, but we are now seeing fires all over the West Coast, bigger fires than we've ever seen.
We're having the worst fire season on record again this year. So last year was the worst. Now this year is the worst.
Right. Okay. So for the record, Donald Trump today was talking about the fires. Said President Trump at California wildfire briefing says it'll start getting cooler. You just watch. And then California Secretary for Natural Resources Wade Crowfoot said, I wish science agreed with you. And Trump said, well, I don't think science knows, actually. So, this is the President of the United States. So let's get into it. What I'm saying is that, look, I think the religious thing is very tricky, right? Because I understand I'm not someone who also is disrespecting people's religion, right? Like, I see why people gravitate towards religious beliefs. But even the writers of the Constitution, right, understood the dangers of mixing state with religion, And that seems to be going far and fast and at the expense of human life, And so, look, I'm not being preachy here. I'm just saying we're having a tough conversation. It's weird to talk about pedophilia and how I'm like, maybe we need to find a way for people to safely come forward before they act. I don't know what that looks like. That seems crazy, but I don't know. Let's try new things, right? Mm-hmm. It's like we might need to acknowledge hey, your religion is in the way. You know, I mean,
Right. In the way of science. And
absolutely. It's fine. We can almost see it as we tried to have a higher power correct these things, and maybe that'll still happen. If we could say this respectfully, maybe this will still happen. But the science, why don't we follow the science? Maybe that's what the higher power wants us to do. I don't know. You see how hard this is? It's really difficult. This is why it's hard to have these conversations, right? Because you're literally on like the Senate floor trying to fix a climate crisis with someone who's a devout religious person who thinks that and a higher, and I'm saying this respectfully, a higher powered entity is going to actually intervene here, and actually this is happening because it's their will, and even sometimes a little doom and gloom, a little like, hey, if this is happening, there's a reason, and we should let it happen, you know? Not to mention the corporate greed element of it, where there's a lot of incentive for certain companies to pollute and whatnot. Okay, look, but here's the deal. We're not being pretentious. I'm just saying, I just want a quick Google dip where I just go like, okay, are these fires tied to climate change, right?
Right.
I suspect it is, but I don't actually know, you know? So I'm like, all right,
well, yeah. I mean, so at a base level, we can say this for sure, is that these fires started Labor Day weekend when we had a massive heat wave in Southern California. It was 115 degrees. Death Valley had the highest temperature recorded on Earth that weekend. So stands to reason that it is getting hotter.
Right.
And the heat, in turn, we had fires.
Right.
So there may be a connection there, folks.
So, right. So I did a little digging in, right? And it says, okay, so climate change, this is what I found from the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions website, okay? Mm-hmm. Which I believe is here, about them. It's a it's an independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to forge practical solutions to climate change. Okay, they ask for donations and stuff. So look, to the best of my knowledge, this seems as legit as I'm willing to dig. Okay, but climate change has been a key factor in increasing the risk and extent of wildfires in the western United States. Wildfire risk depends on a number of factors, including temperature, soil moisture, and the presence of trees, shrubs, and other potential fuel. All these factors have strong direct and indirect ties to climate variability and climate change. Climate change causes forest fuels, the organic matter that burns and spread wildfires, to be more dry, and has doubled the number of large fires between 84 and 2015 in the western United States. So essentially what they're saying is that you have more forest fuel, which is stuff is drier and it catches on fire more. Right?
So it's getting hotter, stuff is getting drier, and it's more flammable.
Right. So, all right, put this into numbers. Research shows that changes in climate that create warmer, drier conditions, increased drought, and longer fire seasons are boosting these increases in wildfire risk. For much of the U.S. West, projections show that an average annual 1 degree Celsius temperature increase would increase the median burned area per year as much as 600% in some types of forests. In the southeastern United States, modeling suggests increased fire risk and a longer fire season with at least 30% increase from 2011 in the area burned by lightning-ignited wildfire by 2060. Okay, this puts it more simply here, but once a fire starts, more than 80% of U.S. wildfires are caused by people. 80% of wildfires are caused by people. That I didn't know.
Right. Well, it's important to know, like, traditionally when you go into a park or an area that's densely populated with trees in Southern California, you have a little sign that says it's particularly dangerous today. Like, don't throw your cigarette butts out the window. Like, this is something that you see like every day here.
Right. And so the other thing is that, like, you don't think about the trickle-down effect of this stuff, because as the temperature is rising, they're saying this is causing, and it gets drier, the spread of the mountain pine beetle, which actually weakens trees. So trees are dying and falling as fuel for fires even faster. It's crazy because if you look down at, like, all right, so this is a big problem because it affects our federal and state budgets. Literally, like, this is costing the country tons of money if you put it in that perspective. And it's messing with people's health, the air quality. If people have, like, specifically people with asthma and stuff. So, yeah, anyway, this increases way more carbon dioxide to go into the atmosphere. Okay, so these fires are a huge fucking deal, and that doesn't matter if you're on the East Coast, you know?
Right.
Okay, so cool. So the question is climate change related to fires? Yes, which I think actually sounds like stupid. It sounds like, oh, duh, like climate change is all about it getting hotter. But people are always like, oh, it's hotter, but like, oh, how come we're having cooler? We'll have like a cooler winter. Or Donald Trump says, oh, it'll cool down. You'll see. Climate change leads to more extreme weather.
Right.
On both ends.
Yes.
So, yes, fires relating to climate change, because I was like, oh, well, sometimes it's like, you think of it as more melting caps and stuff. No, it's crazy. So here's what it comes down to it. All right, fires are caused by climate change. Got that. Here's where I think where the RGN element of this comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Is it too fucking late? That's my question, right? That they don't talk about
Gore
in the news, right?
Yeah.
Like, if they're like, hey, stop, all right, like, use a reusable bottle, drive a fucking Prius, drive a Tesla or whatever, is this actually make a difference? It's hard to, and I don't think, because this is where people see it as like bad versus good, right? This is why people are annoyed by like vegans and stuff, because you're like, right? You're like, oh, how could one person matter? Like your actions, you think that's going to actually like save the world?
Right.
Not everybody's doing it, so what's the point, you know?
Yeah.
So that was my question. That's really why this pod exists, for questions like that. Is it too fucking late? Okay? I got an article from NASA. You heard of it? This is a source. Can we still trust NASA, Erin?
Yes, I think so.
On this podcast, I trust NASA still. Okay? That might be controversial. Okay. And NASA has an article. Is it too late to prevent climate change? Perfect. Clear. This is what people need to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Humans have caused major climate changes to happen already, and we have set in motion more changes still. Even if we stopped emitting greenhouse gases today, global warming would continue to happen for at least several more decades, if not centuries. That's because it takes a while for the planet to respond, and because carbon dioxide, the predominant heat-trapping gas, lingers in the atmosphere for hundreds of years, there is a time lag between what we do and when we feel it. This is the problem with, in my opinion, with global warming, is because we live in a society of emperor's new clothes, like a society of show it to me now. To deal with something that's a problem in the future, it's not even in fucking modern human nature, you know?
Mm-hmm.
We need a drastic change. Like, to be honest, this is capitalism direct. Like, that's what I think about. Capitalism directly negates this, right? Like, I mean, it's almost like people are going to do whatever they can do to make money and survive, and we can call people who work in the oil industry whatever the fuck you want, but ultimately these are just people who are trying to put food on the table for their family. Now, some of them are putting lobsters on the table, you know,
right?
While poisoning the lobster at the same time. I don't know.
Poor lobsters.
Right, but we need a drastic shift. And like Erin, we need like my thing is we need a drastic shift in how we all think to deal with problems like anticipating problems, you know?
Right. Well, because it's so much like instant gratification. Like if you can't see the benefits from drinking from a reusable bottle or driving a Prius immediately,
Oh
like
shit!
what's the point? Yeah, I've got one too. Don't worry. But
I know I have a plastic bottle here, but I also have this. Okay,
a reusable
I mean,
bottle.
I have a reusable bottle also,
But
right?
also, I think it's worth saying that a lot of that is an American thing because I believe other countries in the world are doing a lot better than we are as far as adapting to the needs of the planet to slow the progress of climate
I
change.
completely agree. I said capitalism, but I should be more specific. Modern American capitalism.
Because like America, we're like the home of industrial factory farming, and that is like one of the leading causes of climate, one of the leading kind of perpetrators in the climate crisis here. And yeah, it just seems like we're way behind in favor of those kind of capitalist needs.
Right. So, uh, and that's not to say that capitalism can't work towards these goals, but there has to be a general consensus. And I always think the big problem is, the big problem is lobby money and the transfer of wealth in this country from generation to generation. Because, like, if you have someone who's like an old money oil billionaire or whatever, right? Their family's going to keep wanting to do that, right? They're like, this is how our family made our bones. So it's not even just tied into greed. It's tied into like family pride and the the lineage, right? Like it's like this was our grandfather's company, is how he did it. So it's easy in my mind to see how people turn a blind eye when their whole existence is so tied into something that now has a negative connotation. That's like hard to see, you know?
Right.
I don't know. That's why I'm just putting some kind of humanity to this whole thing. You know what I mean? Okay. In the absence of major action to reduce emissions, global temperature is on track to rise by an average of 6 degrees Celsius, which is about 11 degrees Fahrenheit, according to the latest estimates. Some scientists argue a global disaster is already unfolding at the poles of the planet. The Arctic may be ice-free at the end of the summer melt season within just a few years. Yet, other experts are concerned about Earth passing one or more tipping points, abrupt, perhaps irreversible changes that tip our climate into a new state. Okay, but it may not be too late to avoid or limit some of the worst effects of climate change. Responding to climate change will involve a two-tier approach. Mitigation, reducing the flow of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. 2, adaptation, learning to live with and adapt to climate change that has already been set in motion. The key question is, what will our emissions of carbon dioxide and other pollutants be in the years to come? Recycling and driving more fuel-efficient cars are examples of important behavioral change that will help, but they will not be enough. Because climate change is truly a global complex problem with economic, social, political, and moral ramifications, the solution will require both a globally coordinated response, such as international policies and agreements between countries, a push to clearer forms of energy, and local efforts on the city and regional level. Example, public transportation upgrades, energy efficient improvements, sustainable city planning. It's up to us what happens next. So look, I'm hearing some optimism there. Now, there's a chance that we're it sounds like to me, this is from NASA, there's a chance we're already fucked. There is a chance of that.
Yeah.
And that means because we do not, they're saying for literally the damage we've already done with our emission of greenhouse gases, we might not feel that lag for centuries. So the damage is already done in a lot of ways. So we can only stop it now as much as we can.
Yeah.
So when you think about the blip on the radar here, even if Donald Trump, who's done a lot of damage, which we'll get into, is 4 to 8 years, we're talking about we need to have a drastic change. This change is inevitable. Like, it's going to happen whether you like it or not. So why not just do it now? You know?
Right. Why continue to deny the science, which people do often in favor of religion. So,
Well, religion is, by the way, I just want to say, people's religion, which can be really helpful to them and also not get in their way, is used as a political tool
Yes.
by lobby groups, right? So they go
Right.
like, oh, well, people, devout people who are good-natured human beings are sometimes pawns in the game of these corporations,
Well, yeah,
which are
and like the scientific fact gets like weaponized like against people who have religious beliefs. Um, so in an article here that was in response to novelist Jonathan Franzen, who wrote an article about how basically the planet is doomed, we've gone too far. Scientists clapped back about how what he was saying was maybe right, but not fully accurate. Rob Jackson, who's the chair of Stanford University's Earth System Science Department, said, all the discussions of doom and gloom have not led to the change we need. It almost relieves us of responsibility. If an apocalypse is inevitable, why should I do anything to stave it off, to minimize its effects? It reduces actions rather than enhancing them. And he said that we are not locked into a Mad Max world, and every tenth of a degree matters. So even like these minuscule changes or delays that we can
right,
create in the progression of climate change um, are effective.
right,
So it isn't just we're going to flip on a switch and the climate will level itself out and this will be the normal climate on Earth. It's everything we can do just to slow it down, like 1/10 at a time, is a huge difference
right.
to the
Well,
planet.
that's awesome to hear. To be honest, I feel more comfort from this because I was always just like, I tend to be pessimistic in this way. Like when
Right.
it comes to, it's hard to see like when you're like, I'm using a water bottle, I'm using a reusable metal water bottle,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone else I know is using plastic bottles, right? Including me. Sometimes I have a plastic one right now. You too. Yeah. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that you grab them. I mean, because of the pandemic, I have them, which is like kind of interesting because you think about the trickle effect. Like before the pandemic, I was not buying them anymore and filling my water, and now I like feel this need. I'm like to have some waters in my house for
Right.
safety
Right.
precaution, and then I end up dipping into it. But I'm only human and I'm not perfect. It's not what this is about. But it is like you see everybody else consuming recklessly, and you're like, what? How could I? On such a small level, how could I affect everything? Look how big it all is. But
Mm-hmm.
you do. I guess you kind of do.
Yeah. Well, so Jackson also goes on to say every tenth of a degree increases the chance of runaway permafrost, ice melt, sea rise. He says we don't know where all the tipping points are. So, and a 2-degree threshold is an arbitrary threshold. The farther we go, the more likely we'll make it catastrophic.
Right.
So his main message is like, we really don't know. Science doesn't know for a fact, like, what the tipping point is to where we're just too far gone.
Yeah, I don't
But
think it's that simple.
it's not that simple. But his main message, who this guy who's a scholar of the earth, says
Right.
that the most important thing we can do is vote, and vote accordingly with the people who are going to hopefully stop the earth from catching on fire
Yes, and
forever.
Erin, that'll bring me nicely into my next point. But first, I need a quick pee break, as
Oh, I'll take
always.
one too. Great.
And we're back. that'll be cut out of the. This will be cut out of the podcast recording, but it'll still be in the video because the video is a pain in the ass to edit. So whatever, you
little
can handle
behind
it.
the scenes for you.
Just fast forward through. It's fine, guys. Most of you are listening on the pod anyway. Okay, so good. So we're saying, is it too late? It's hard to kind of know, but meaning on the positive end, we know that we can stop now, and then that's the best we can do is change our behavior.
Right.
So it's cool that to know that, like, when you see your city has like electric buses and stuff, that it actually does make a difference,
Mm-hmm.
and like, so we'll see. Anyway, one of the most interesting things before we just, this is kind of a sidebar, but one of the things that I find interesting is I feel like you cannot, that like Elon Musk was able to tap into, is you cannot really just force everybody to be a quote unquote hippie. But what you can do is make like a green trend hip,
Right. Yeah, totally.
and just make it the best car, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, it's cool to have a reusable water bottle. Like if you show up to, your Orange Theory class with one of these plastic guys, it's like, but if you have your, your cute bottle, or that's why it's a marketing thing too. Like all these companies,
Right.
like at Starbucks, you can buy your reusable mug or whatever. Like make it cool.
Right. Well, like it's funny because like in LA and stuff, like it's true. If you can't show up to LA with like a plastic water bottle to like a workout class, you look like a fucking dipshit.
You're a pariah.
Like every place has like refillable water machines, and like it's the standard. So that is interesting
Right.
culturally, how like that's something we're surrounded by. That
Mm-hmm.
most places have water fountains and whatnot, but a plastic bottle, like, it does not go with the Lulu outfit. You know what I mean? You rock.
True. True. I mean, I work in a skyscraper,
Right.
and it's, a green building. Like they do energy conserving measures in the elevators. We have all water stations and everything. So I think, I don't know, out here it's pretty kind of easy and cool to.
Right. It's the sad state of events in this country for me. Like the part that is like, it's sad that I have the thought that like, oh, these fires are mostly on the West Coast, and so people are gonna be like, oh, well, like that's just a bunch of fucking liberals or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That I'm gonna have the thought that like, you know what I'm saying? That it's like, oh, well, and even when you see Trump say like it's about, oh, well, they need better fire management here.
You need to clean up your forests.
Right, as
Is what he
opposed to
said.
recognizing the actual problem. I mean, our president is actually the person who, if you remember years back before he was president, called global warming a Chinese hoax. And so anyway, how does politics factor into it? That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, today, the magazine Scientific American has, for the first time in their history ever, endorsed a presidential candidate. So Scientific American, if you don't know what it is, and by the way, I don't know what that is either, but it's interesting. It's a popular American science magazine. Famous scientists like Albert Einstein. Robert Einstein. No, Albert Einstein. My thing clicked away. Has contributed articles to it. So these are like the tops. Okay, the top
these
guys.
are the top scientist guys. Albert Einstein. Ever heard of him?
Albert Einstein. That's me. I'm just trying to let you guys. I'm trying to pretend I'm not Jewish. It's the oldest continuously published monthly magazine in the United States.
Huh.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's never in its history. It became monthly in It only became monthly in 1921, but it's older than that. I think it's 175 years old. And it's never ever endorsed a political candidate. Today they have endorsed Joe Biden to be president of the United States of America. In an article they put out, I'm just going to click on it right here. I have it. And here we go. And what they say is pretty interesting. It says Scientific American endorses Joe Biden. We've never backed a presidential candidate in our 175-year history until now. And they said we do it, but we don't do it lightly. The evidence and science show that Donald Trump has badly damaged the U.S. and its people because he rejects evidence and science. The most devastating example is his dishonest and inept response to the COVID-19 pandemic, which cost more than 200,000 American lives. He's also attacked environmental protections, medical care, and the researchers and public science agencies that helped this country prepare for its greatest challenges. This is why we urge you to vote for Joe Biden, who is offering fact-based plans to protect our health, our economy, and the environment. These and other proposals he has put forth can set the country back on a course for a safer, more prosperous, and more equitable future. The pandemic would strain any nation and system, but Trump's rejection of evidence and public health measures have been catastrophic in the U.S. He was warned many times in January and February about the onrushing disease, yet he did not develop a national strategy to provide protective equipment, coronavirus testing, or clear health guidelines. Testing people for the virus and tracing those is how countries in Europe and Asia have gained control over their outbreaks, saved lives, and successfully reopened businesses and schools. But in the U.S., Trump claimed falsely that anybody that wants a test can get a test. That was untrue in March and remained untrue through the summer. Trump opposed $25 billion for increased testing and tracing that was in a pandemic relief bill as late as July. These lapses accelerated the spread of disease through the country, particularly in highly vulnerable communities that include people of color, where deaths climb disproportionately to those of the rest of the population. So, essentially, COVID-19 is the reason they're citing for pushing it over. Not specifically the fires, which is where I thought this would be coming from. But, it goes on. I'm not going to read the entire article, but it says, although Trump and his allies have created, this is how it ends. He says, it's not certain how many because they lay out all these ambitious climate plans, Biden will be able to accomplish. Much depends on laws to be written and passed by Congress. But he is acutely aware that we must heed the abundant research showing ways to recover from our present crises and successfully cope with future challenges. Although Trump and his allies have tried to create obstacles that prevent people from casting ballots safely in November, either by mail or in person, it is crucial that we surmount them and vote. It's time to move Trump out and elect Biden, who has a record of following the data and being guided by science. So, this is not something people are taking lightly. It's pretty interesting. Because it's interesting because I feel like when it comes to climate science, it's one of those issues that has a clear choice in candidate.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's part of the whole thing, like this Green New Deal that Trump and his cronies laugh at,
right. Right. So and I think that I don't know. I think Biden was not even into the Green New Deal, or not publicly saying it.
The Dems.
Right, but the Dems. But it seems like that's kind of what Sean was saying is about keeping it accountable. But this is one of those things that right now. Look, I'm on the West Coast. If you're not on the West Coast, when you go outside and you see the sky, you can't see the sky. In California, you can always see the sky. I mean, it's overcast almost never. Right now, you can't see any blue. The sun and the moon look crazy colors when they're there.
Crazy. And the sky's orange. It's hard to breathe. And in Northern California, Oregon, the sky is orange. We had a day here last Thursday where it was piss yellow all day long. It fucked up my vision. My eyesight was really off all day because of the light coming from outside. It's really bad.
Right. It's just now. Yeah. I mean, it's just I it's I don't know how you could vote. To be honest, I don't really see any redeeming qualities of Trump. I don't understand how you could vote for him regardless. But I think, we need to put climate change back on the fucking – it needs to start being a sexy issue. Because
and don't forget
you don't want this, what we have.
The Paris Agreement, Trump has announced a couple years ago that he's going to pull out of this global Paris Agreement.
Yeah, in 2017 he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
that's
so
the
the
thing.
earliest effective date for withdrawal from that agreement is November 2020, shortly before the end of his term. So
Right, and he laid out. He said, 2019, he doubled down on that, like when they're going to pull out. But if Biden gets in, they'll re-up it. But the thing is, this stuff is global initiatives. Like even China was agreeing about science. They were involved, and they're the biggest polluters on the planet now.
I know.
But we took responsibility. That's something that, like, Trump's always all America first and all this blind patriotism. It's like Obama was trying to actually take responsibility for the damage that our country did when we were reckless with the climate science to set the example going forward,
Instead of denying and acting like we had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Whatever. Look, what are we even talking about? We're not going to convince people who like Trump, blah, blah, blah. What we're saying is that it's really interesting. My main questions here, where were the RGN questions? Was just is it too late? And it seems like we don't know if it's too late, which means it's worth fighting for. You know what I mean? Like, if you knew, you think about like when you would be like, if you find out a girl, like you liked a girl when you were younger and you were like, it's like, you know when you'd be like, she doesn't like you or whatever, sometimes you just be like, I don't know, she didn't really say anything. You'd fight for it. You know what I mean?
Right.
We gotta fight for it. We gotta do, even odds are it's not good if you don't hear something good, right? We need to fucking fight for this earth like a horny teen. You know,
we absolutely need to do exactly that.
Oh man, shit, and like I'm drinking out of a plastic bottle right now. I'm not. I said it. I'm not. We're not. I'm not preaching here. That's the whole point of this. Is I'm not pretending I'm fucking perfect. You know what I mean? But man, optimistically, I'm saying this was a turning point in my life here. Like when you breathe in this air here, and you're in a pandemic where they're like, you have to stay inside. The only thing you can do is walk. And then they're trying, now your walks are away. And both things, because the pandemic is caused by the same behaviors that cause global warming, which is deforestation and getting too close to wildlife, right? So now we've mingled too much with the animals like we shouldn't. And so that's where these viruses come from. If you need to watch the movie Contagion,
Contagion, outbreak.
Right.
Watch out for rogue animals.
And the movie Contagion, by the way, the guys who made that movie, it's a Steve Soderbergh movie. The guy who wrote the movie, I actually knew someone who knew him and was talking about how much research this guy did. And actually, when the COVID-19 pandemic started, he was on the committee,
the committee that was disbanded.
Right.
Oh my God.
So he's done that much. He did that much research into pandemics where he was actually called upon to be an expert on it.
Wow.
And it's crazy because if you watch the movie Contagion, which was made in like 2011, I think, it literally talks about social distancing, R-naughts, like stuff that I like didn't hear about until this happened. I knew nothing about any of this. And it's all about contact tracing's a big thing in it. Like
vaccine lotteries.
Yeah, vaccine lotteries, like bracelets for vaccines. But the one thing, it's crazy. The one thing that they don't fucking deal with in that movie is people fighting against vaccines and a president fighting against science. It's not in the movie because you don't even see the president in the movie because you're like, it's not even. It's unfathomable to think that the president would want people to die.
In the way of people not getting this virus.
What a time! What a fucking time! And oh man, it's so frustrating because it's like it all comes back to the same thing where it's like I don't know why people don't think about. I don't know why people don't see consequences like I do. Not that I'm some oracle or anything, but I'm like, oh, when I saw Donald Trump's behavior,
right,
when he was running for president, and my whole life, I was like, wow, that guy, the guy from Howard Stern, like that idiot, and then he got up there, and people I know were like, we're fine with the way he was acting, thought it was funny, and you're like. Do you take anything seriously? Do you think anything can happen to you? Like, I don't even understand,
Right.
So, now we're living in it. So, I don't know. Frustrating times. This was it's really, I cannot reiterate this enough. Like, if fires are tied to global warming, which we've proved here.
Yeah.
We need to stop this in any way we can, because you do not want to walk into your house and smell campfires. Like,
I know, it's
terrible.
really bad. It's really bad.
All right, Erin. Well, I think
Dan.
that does it for the regular guy news this week. I believe we had a nice special report about poll workers. What's that website again for people if they want to?
Powerthepolls.org.
Powerthepolls.org, and everybody, every little thing you do, it's worth it. I'm going to try to cut down on my plastic bottles, which seems to be my problem. I already drive a Prius.
You already
electric
drive a Prius. Don't buy things that are factory farmed. You don't have to be a vegan, but like, don't buy factory farm stuff. It's really bad for the environment. Don't litter.
And vote. Voting is the biggest thing.
You must vote.
And we need to get to a place where we can have more political options that support climate science. And right now, there's only one party. So, there's only one party. And, the reality is, this climate science really, climate change is the fucking White Walkers. It is coming for us, and we can fight amongst ourselves all we want, but the enemy to the north, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's coming. Real. They're coming. I mean, they're already kind of here. There might be a White Walker walking down the street right now. It's a little bit here, but by the time, the next generation and, your kids are adults, they're going to be everywhere.
I know. Can you believe it? It's like people are happy to procreate. They even have gender reveals that cause fires.
Right. Great.
And then don't care about the world they're leaving for their kids. It's like,
it doesn't make any sense.
Insane. I hope to be better. I'm sure I won't be. All right, everybody. Remember to hit the regular guy news at gmail.com. Hit the fucking mailbag if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and also rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And everybody, thank you for coming to the RGN, the regular guy news. I'm signing out. Thank you to Erin out in the field.
Thank you,
This
Dan.
is RGN. And everybody, as always, I encourage you, stay informed, stay unpretentious, and stay regular.